Okay, I'm here with Peter Kuster. For those of you guys not familiar with Peter Kuster, he is one of our wrestlers on the team and one of our leaders. We were very fortunate to have Peter being ranked as high as 6th last year, going into the national tournament and everything. There was a bunch of turmoil there. Not much fun happened finally when we got to the national tournament when it was getting canceled. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, we want everybody to get to know you. For anybody who doesn't already know you, we want everybody to get to know you. So, Peter, why don't you start by telling everybody where you're from, what is your major, and what do you want to do with that major?
Yeah, so I'm from Jefferson, Missouri. I'm a junior here at Drury, and I'm a biochem major. So initially, I was a PT major. I was kind of going into PT stuff, and it's mainly due to my dad being a PT. But I kind of talked to him, and I've always wanted to do something with the medical field, right? As you know, as is PT, but specifically, I wanted to work with cardiology, like be a pediatric cardiologist, and maybe like some sort of sports med if that kind of doesn't work out. And I've got about a year and a half, kind of just to figure that out and hone in on what I want. But realistically, right now, I think what I really would like to do is help, kids with their cardiology problems. And that's just due to the fact that I have a heart condition, and that's just something I've always had to do. It's not anything major, but it's just something I've always had to go to a cardiologist every single year, and I've always been around it. So that's kind of just where all that comes from. And we'll see if, I stick with it, just because I still got a few years left potentially to really, a couple years left to really think about what I want to do specifically.
Yeah. So leaning more toward medical school now. I know you were talking about more schooling and PT school and stuff, but more education is never a bad thing, especially if it's something in the medical or health professions. That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Switching gears here. Obviously, we talked about your school and education, but let's switch gears to talking about family. The Kuster family is very much a wrestling family and very much a sports family. And I'll let you take it and talk a little bit about your family.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I guess I'll just introduce you. I've got 3 younger brothers. The youngest, he's 8. His name's Benjamin. And then I have another brother who's a sophomore in high school. His name's JoJo. And lastly is Will, who's a freshman here at Drury. My parents, Ben and Regina, did a really great job because, growing up, I didn't start wrestling. They didn't want anybody to really start sports until we were 6 at least. And which I thought was a really good thing. So I didn't start wrestling. And we also are a big soccer family. My whole family has played soccer. I've always played soccer. Started both wrestling and soccer when I was 6. And my parents did a really good job of just kind of letting us do what we want. I tried out baseball once. My dad called it the jean league because you could wear jeans to the game and be okay. And so, I wasn't very good by any means, but he always let us try whatever we wanted. And didn't really push us in anything until I hit probably 7th or 8th grade, and I started hitting my stride in wrestling. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I actually like winning a little bit. This is fun. And then we never, even in high school, my family, we never specialized. I thought I was going to go to college for soccer for a while until probably the end of my junior year, and even into the senior year, I was still thinking about it. But my parents did a really good job of not forcing us anything, not trying to burn us out. And that's kind of where everything comes from. And just being in a family of 4 boys, you start getting this competitive edge. So you start trying to specialize early. You're like, oh, I need to be better at them at this sport, but even then we still did a pretty good job of just trying other things. We tried golf. I'm terrible at golf. We found out a lot more about what we weren't good at than what we were good at, which helps you specialize a little bit easier.
That's true. That's pretty good. I tell guys when they come on a visit, you're going to take some classes here as a freshman, and just as important as to figuring out what you want to do, it's equally as important figuring out what you don't want to do, right? You don't want to get too far along in something before you realize you really don't want to do that as a career. You don't want to do that as a lifestyle. So that's good, man. So we're going to fast forward just a little bit to actually rewind a little bit to last year at Nationals. Now we talked a little bit about how that was kind of a heartbreaking experience, but I think you can give a unique perspective as a student athlete waiting to compete at nationals. We get there and everything, and what all happens leading up to it, and then finally the feeling there afterwards. But I'll let you tell your story.
Yeah. So nationals is a Friday Saturday tournament. It was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we drove up, I guess, and got to Sioux Falls on a Wednesday. And we went to the arena and ended up getting a workout in. And first of all, walking into the arena, this is my first time at nationals, obviously, and I thought it was awesome. You see the match, you see the stands, you see everything. You just imagine it filled up with people ready to wrestle. And we got a good workout in, and I knew in the back of my head, stuff's going on with this whole coronavirus, COVID deal. Like, I just have to focus on me. I can't do anything about it. I just need to make sure I'm ready for Friday when we wrestle. So we got a good workout in. We ended up having a couple practice partners because it was me and Jared Rennick were the two that made it to nationals. And we ended up bringing a couple guys like Ben Stallman. We get a good workout in. We sit down and just kind of take it all in. Nick Burkhardt, the assistant coach, he did a really good job just kind of getting me to slow down and be like, hey, like, take this experience in. You're going to remember this for a long time. Just kind of don't neglect sitting here and just taking a look around. So I did that. And then Thursday came around. We got back to the hotel Wednesday night, and I didn't realize it. Well, I did before, but I didn't think it was kind of be like that coming out of high school, is that all the teams stayed in one hotel. So you get to see all these guys walking in our hotel. You're like, oh, that kid's really good. Or, oh, I heard about him. And you see all that stuff. So we get back to the hotel and get all situated, go to bed. Thursday morning, we wake up at a decent time, go back to the venue, and get another workout in. And at this point, I think it was either during the workout or midday, they had announced that there would be no more spectators besides family. And so my family was still going to come anyways, which was great. And I was like, all right, I don't need to worry about fans. I just need to worry about me. Like, who cares? I just need to wrestle my best. And this might even be better for me. I might get too nervous if too many people are watching. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. It doesn't really matter at that point. And so we got another workout in on Thursday. Went back to the hotel. I can't really remember specifics on what we did. I'm sure I think we had a meeting and we kind of talked about things. And then we went back to the venue later, closer towards dinner, to get another workout in, just to, feel around, get some weight off if I needed to. And at that point, I was probably 0.7 over to a pound maybe. So I was feeling really good. All I had to do was get something to eat and go to bed and sleep it off that night. And it was probably 6. And right after we got our workout in, coach had to go to a coach's meeting. And we were back at the hotel while you were there. And you'd been gone for a while. And we were talking about it. It was me, Ben Stallman, Jared Rennick, and Jacob Bruni were all in a room, kind of just talking to each other, seeing like, hey, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And you walked in the room, you're done with the coach's meeting, and they had told you that it was fluid. We didn't really know. We knew what it being fluid meant, but we didn't know what the probability was of this happening or that happening. And we talked for a while, and then I think you were probably 3 steps away from us towards the door walking out when you got a notification saying that it was canceled, right? And after that, you don't really know what to do as a student athlete, because I'd been preparing. I didn't really care about my wins and losses throughout the season. I cared about preparing myself for nationals and for regionals and being the best wrestler that I could be then. And I knew deep down, that I was wrestling the best I could right then and feeling the best I could at that moment. And whenever they canceled it, it's like I've mentioned this before, it's like a feeling of kind of like helplessness. You don't know what to do. You're like, wow, like I can't do anything. Like my goal for this year, and I've had this goal for a long time, just kind of got pulled away, ripped away without any, you couldn't look back. You couldn't be like, dang, like you can say I could have done this or I should have done this, but there's no proof. There's no nothing, because everything's different at the national tournament. You never know what's going to happen there. And so I was feeling really confident in myself. And so after that, me and Jared just kind of sat there, and Jared being a good captain that he was, he kind of like consoled me. He's like, hey, it's all right. Like, think about next year. It's going to be okay. You got this. And I didn't really know what to do. So we just kind of sat on the bed and just didn't say a word. We just sat there as this feeling, and it doesn't hit you. Like I said, it doesn't hit you until probably a couple hours later. And it was probably 9 or 10 when it really hit me. I was like, wow, one of my life goals, And I tried to put it in perspective for myself there at the beginning. I was like, you know what, this isn't the most important thing in the world. Like, I'm gonna go on in the next few years and live a really good life and be a good person, and I'm not gonna, like, there's gonna be better milestones in my life. But then I had one of the alumni, John Ost, ended up calling me, and I explained that to him, like, yeah, it's okay. Like, I've got, this isn't the most important thing in my life. And he's like, yes, I understand that, but you also need to understand this is one of the most important things at this moment. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to take this to heart, because I kept trying to tell myself, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right. And then finally, I kind of in the conversation with him and with Jacob Bruni and Jared Rennick and Ben, and I was like, you know what, this sucks. You can't do anything about it. We just sat in the room, hung out, and even because all the athletes were there, even the other teams, you couldn't walk outside in the hall you couldn't walk 15 steps without running into someone sitting on the floor, probably going to be a senior, sitting on the floor, either crying or just looking out of the distance like nothing, like no, nothing in their eyes, just like, holy crap, what do I do now? And it was a really gloomy experience. And it's not a bad thing to kind of be super sad. So I didn't really take it too bad in that aspect. But after a while, you kind of have to be like, all right, let's move on. And by the time we ended up driving back the next day, and we stopped at the zoo. And it was funny because I think Coach Reynolds, you were probably the only one that wanted to be at that zoo, or you just wanted to stay there the longest. And we were all just like, oh, God. It was a good thing that we stayed there when we did, because if we stayed in the car for however many hours in such a crappy mood that we were in, I don't think we would have made it without killing each other. And as much as we hated being at that cold zoo, it was for the best that we stayed there for as long as we did. And so we finished up at the zoo. My family ended up coming to Minnesota. They're still only 30 minutes out whenever I called my dad. They were 30 minutes out whenever I called my dad and was like, hey, it's canceled. And he thought it was a joke at first. But, they ended up coming to the zoo with us. We got back to Springfield later that night or the next day. And campus is empty at this point because of spring break. So it just makes everything worse. You don't see anybody. No one's in my apartment. I had to get all my clothes. And Jacob Bruni, who was with us there, he's from Jeff City as well. I was going to ride back with him home to see my family and just stay there. So I ended up staying the night here in Springfield. And that might have been the worst part of the whole experience, was sitting at your room by yourself, just overthinking everything, at least for me, because I do that. But, you start to think about it and put it in perspective. You're like, you know what, there's nothing I can do. Let's move on to the next thing. And so that's kind of what I had to focus on coming out of that whole experience.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that. I know it was a tough time, and looking at it through my perspective, it might be quite differently than looking at it through a student athlete perspective. So I know it's important for you to be able to share that. And then, when we got back to campus, obviously we were on spring break, as were a lot of schools on spring break. And then it seemed like it was the spring break that never ended. We just went from spring break all the way to the end of the semester, and then into the summer. And then finally, hey, we're talking about coming back to school the next year, and talk a little bit about, what we did as a team, what we did during the spring and then summer, and then finally getting back to campus here.
Yeah. So typically after the season's over, we probably have about a week or two before we need to start, getting back into shape. As much as, I always want to get back as soon as I can. Be like, all right, let's get better. Like tomorrow after nationals, let's do it. Or after regionals, I lost out my freshman. I'm like, all right, I want to get back in and get better. But it's probably a good thing that we end up taking a break, giving yourself time to think. And whenever you were at home, Coach Reynolds, you would send out good like workout videos. We did these burpees, which was awful, but it helped. It was something good that we needed to do. And so throughout the summer, whenever we couldn't meet up, we still had workouts. We still had Zoom meetings every week, twice a week, talking about, how to get better mentally, how to get better physically, how to get through something like this, how to stay safe, COVID procedures, how to go get tested, everything else. So we stayed in contact pretty well via Zoom this whole time. And then whenever summer hit, they allowed us to have 2 practices a week, correct? I'm pretty sure we did. So I would drive down, because I live in Jeff City, so I drive down to Springfield those 2 times and bring my brother Will. And we would wrestle those twice a week. And luckily for me, at least, I had I had someone who's about my size that I could wrestle with. So I wrestled with Will whenever we wanted to during the summer, because we were just around each other the whole time. There was no one else that we were around realistically. And so after summer came along, like you said, it was just like a never-ending spring break. And then all of a sudden, as soon as spring break, like, yeah, it's the next year. Let's, have you signed up for classes? Did you get everything set up? Like this and that. Like, have you got housing situated? Like everything just kind of hit at once. It wasn't, a gradual progression, which is fine. I mean, there wasn't a ton of things set in place so that you could make it smooth. And so we got back to school and we adhered by Drury's, limitations. We did what we needed to do, and we split up into 4 pods until recently when we finally are able to get back into 2. We had 4 different morning workout groups and then 4 different wrestling groups. And so we kind of just progressively gotten into a bigger and bigger group, but still using all the same procedures and everything else to make sure that everything's going okay. I listened to the Hawkeye Wrestling Club put on a match last night, or a few matches last night, and I didn't end up getting to watch them because I didn't end up paying for them. But I listened to Tom and Terry Brands they were being interviewed beforehand. And one of the questions was, how did you stay motivated? Like, how do you get these guys to stay motivated? He's like, honestly, he's like, how do you not stay motivated? And that's just kind of their mentality. And I think that should resonate with a lot of wrestlers. Like, how do you not stay motivated? And so throughout the whole summer and spring, for me, this was just a continuation of last year's season. I was in good shape. I was healthy. I really wanted to wrestle, and I don't think that's changed as much throughout the spring or summer. I've just continued to want to wrestle and get better every single day. That way, next year, whenever I make the nationals, I'll be even more confident and ready to wrestle.
That's good. I like that. I like that perspective and kind of lead up to it. Our current atmosphere and training on the you talked a little bit about that, but our current atmosphere and training, obviously, we went from pods to slightly bigger pods or bigger groups and combining a few pods, and then we test every single week. We test every single Tuesday to make sure that we're at that test positivity of 0, or to make sure that we don't have a problem at any point in time. And I think that's something that has helped us to hold each other accountable and hold ourselves accountable, to make sure that we're doing what we need to do, wearing a mask and socially distancing and all of those things. And it's been absolutely incredible. You guys have taken a lot of responsibility and have done extremely well. Talk a little bit about, we just finally came out with our season. We're trying to vote on our GLVC, or our conference, for our season. And it's looking a lot like we'll have mostly conference duels, no tournaments, mostly conference duels, and then a couple of non-conference duels. But as of right now, it's looking about there'll be 9 duels throughout the month of January, starting January 9th or 10th, and then running throughout the entire month of January. And then in February, in the 3rd week of February, we'll have our NCAA Super Regional in Edmond, Oklahoma at UCO, and then our national tournament in mid-March. So talk a little bit about your season focus, like what you're, switching gears here, switching to, hey, now it's going to start in January and they're all going to be duels. What is your mindset? What are you thinking about from right now all the way up until when we start here?
Yeah, so I think this season obviously is going to be, way different than any other season before. And I think with that, you need to have a little bit different of mindset. Last season, I was just prepared to be healthier than everyone, be more consistent than everyone, diet better than everyone the whole time, which you still need all that stuff. But with the minimal duels, minimal matches, I think this year, for me, I'm just really going to focus on staying healthy and feeling good. Like, I don't need, not as many people. There's a big thing during the season where you can tell by the end of the season who's worn down, who wants to go home, who doesn't want to be there. And I think this season will be a little bit different because there's not going to be as many matches. Some guys probably won't even wrestle in all of them. And I think they're not going to be as worn down and they're going to be ready to compete. And so for me, my thing is I need to make sure that I am wrestling the best that I can. It doesn't matter how many matches I get in, how many times I win. Like, for me, I need to really focus on just being in the best shape possible. And which, you still need to do that, but I don't need to worry about wearing other people down. I don't need to worry about consistency and staying mentally tough every single, few days where we wrestle however many matches on the weekend and then 2 duels during the week or a duel during the week. So I'm focusing right now on making sure I keep my size and my strength, because I did work on getting a little bit bigger this summer, because I was about an average size 41. And so this year I'm really focused on keeping my size and strength while maintaining a good, body fat. I think I'm going to treat the practices a little bit more like learning opportunities rather than like a grind, which is, it's good I need to be in shape. But for me, I think I've got all the tools to, grind through a match mentally and physically. But right now, that whole last year, that's what that was. I needed to make sure I could get through a whole season and just grind. This season, I think I still have that, and I just really need to focus on getting better, being smarter on the mat, mat awareness. And there's some really good guys coming into, the program. There's a lot of hammers in the freshman class. And I'm going to do as much as I can to help them, because whenever I was a freshman, there was a few seniors, but it's still such a young program. It's hard to, have those few guys that are really solid, like good characters, because those guys who came in that first year, they didn't have many mentors. They're the first people there. And so I'm really taking it as a chance to, help those younger guys, tell them what I feel like I should have known as a freshman.
Yeah.
And I really just want to make sure that, the program keeps growing. And so whenever I'm gone, those guys can make it even better than what it was.
That's awesome. That's a good perspective. That's, you're doing the right things and you're feeling good about it whenever, one of your athletes is like already looking forward to helping the program grow and not just about what he's going to get out of it himself. So thank you for your season focus. So the last question, or the last thing I want you to talk about, and the last thing I have to ask you is, what is your why? Now, we worked on this in the spring a bit, and then again in the summer, and we talked about it at the beginning of this year. What is your why? And kind of describing, working that out. Your why is, you can say it's your purpose, or it's what motivates you in the morning when you get up in the morning. And you have to be very clear about your why. You don't have a different why for different circumstances, or this is my why in wrestling, this is my why in school, this is my why in my personal life. It's all the same, to where no matter what you're doing, you look at, wrestling, or you look at your education, you look at your personal relationships and your behavior and your lifestyle through that scope. So we had all of you guys kind of, determine what your why is, or identify what your why is, and be honest with yourselves about what that is and what it means to you. And so I wanted to ask you about yours and have you give it, so that other people have a perspective about why you do what you do, or what they can expect when they meet Peter Kuster. But tell me, what is your why?
Yeah, so this was tough for me. It took me a while to really think about it, because I thought I knew what it was, but I'm like, oh no, that can't be it. Like, there has to be something deeper than that. But realistically, I kind of came down to the fact that I'm extremely competitive, and I think I'm super competitive in everything that I do, because my why is like, I want to be the best person that I can be in everything. If that means helping other people, I'm going to work really hard to help other people. If that means being good at wrestling, I'm going to work really hard at wrestling to be better at wrestling and being the best that I can. Like,
This,
I don't know.
I'm laughing because this reminds me of a story that I'm going to tell immediately after this, but go ahead.
Oh yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. So anyways, that's my whys. I really like to be the best person I can be. And I think that was instilled in me by my parents. They do a really good job of, if you're going to do something, and I wasn't the best student ever. I kind of blew off a couple, no, I didn't blow it off. I had decent grades, but I knew I could have done a lot better in high school. And I didn't realize why I felt so bad about it until I got older. I'm like, I hate presenting myself as half of what I am. I want someone to know that I put everything I could into that, and there was nothing else that I can do. So if that means that I lose a match and I gave everything I can, that's all right with me. I'll just learn and get better from it and do better the next time, But as long as that's kind of something that it's funny, because it kind of leads into my pre-match rituals or routines. I do the same, stretching, warm up, everything else. But before the match, I probably repeat the same saying like 50 times at least. I always say in my head, I don't care if I win or lose as long as I wrestle as hard as I can. Some variation of that. I will say that probably 50 to 100 times before every match. So, coach behind me, hype me up. Hey, you doing all right? Like, doing okay? You feeling all right? I'm like, yeah. But I'm not really hearing anything he's saying. All I'm doing is repeating that in my head, which it
That's
helps
your
me.
mantra?
So that's my mantra.
Yeah.
But
that's always good.
That's kind of where I'm at.
That's good. That was another thing we worked on. We worked on our mantras too. Having something that you can tell yourself, or having something that you're repeating in your mind to be able to put you in the right focus, in the right frame of mind. That's pretty good. Thanks, Peter. But one last thing. So I kind of laughed about, even if it means helping people, I want to be the best, because I have a story to tell about you. Now, this is where the interview ends, and I'm going to tell this story anyway because it's kind of funny, and it's after school was over. I think it was during the summer, wasn't it? And you know what kind of story I'm telling.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so it was during the summertime, and we're doing club practices, right? And I'm leaving the gym. Practice has been over for a while. I'm leaving the gym.
This is like at 6. This is like at 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
at night, it's not like during the day.
It was probably 8 o'clock at night, at least 8 o'clock at night, because I think practice didn't start till like 6. So it was like 8 o'clock at night. I'm leaving the gym, and I'm like, I got to go get dinner. Usually on those nights, usually eat a late dinner. But I get a phone call from you. And it was like, hey, coach, I didn't know who else to call. I didn't know what else to do. But there's this homeless guy that's he's kind of sitting by the side of the road here. And I'm trying to help him out. And I don't know if he was hurt or injured or whatever, but I don't know what to do. And I was kind of confused as to what you were asking. And at first I thought, well, clearly I was the second phone call that Peter made, because he would, if it's somebody injured or if this guy's hurt or he's in trouble, he probably called 911 and called an ambulance or somebody else, right? Well, no, I was the first phone call that you had made. And it was by Ozarks Technical College, their campus. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm already leaving campus. I was like, tell me where you are. I'll come to you. Right. And so I pull up, and it's by this bus bench, and there's a homeless guy there, and he's having a hard time. And he's sitting on the curb, and it looked like maybe he was in the road or something, is what you had told me. Like,
well, he was crawling on the concrete to the bus stop, like crawling on his hands and knees. And I'm like, this guy needs help. Like, he's not going to make it there. So
I stop, and I'm like, okay, let's check him out, see if he's injured or anything. Ask him his name and everything, and see if we can help him. And you're like, I didn't call anybody because he had told me the story, like that he'd just gotten released from the jail earlier, and they just let him go. And he was coming to the bus stop because he lived somewhere. Obviously, he needed a ride back to where he lived. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going to give this guy a ride, because I'd have a hard time explaining it to your mom if I let you take this homeless guy home, and if anything happened from there, I'd have a hard time explaining it to you.
Whatever happened to me would happen to you.
Yeah, I'm sure. And in fact, I think your mom has actually told me that. So I was like, man, I'll just give this guy a ride home. And we get him into my car, and I'm like, well, where do you live? I'll make sure you get there. And he lived, just south a little ways, but it was a little bit of a drive from that bus stop. He would have been, having to ride a couple of buses to get there. And I remember thinking, like, I'm hungry, but I'm doing a good thing, and I'm helping one of my athletes do a good thing too. And now he feels good, and I feel good about it, right? And so this guy's telling me where he lives, and he's like, oh, but I'm kind of hungry. Can we stop at a place or whatever? And I said, sure, yeah. And I pretty much knew it was a given that I was probably going to buy him a meal or something. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, well, that just seems like the right thing to do. So I take him to on our way to his like apartment that he lived in. There was like I can't remember if it was like Popeyes.
It was a KFC.
KFC, okay,
or Popeyes.
something like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
we'll just get, you know, a chicken dinner or something and get this guy like a whole thing of chicken, a whole mess of chicken. And
You
I'm
got him
like,
dessert too, didn't you?
yeah,
Did you
something.
buy
I
him
was like,
dessert?
throw a pie, like something, an apple pie in there or something. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's enough food to where like, you know, he can have breakfast the next morning. I was thinking, all right, you know, so he's gonna get dinner and I'm gonna give him a ride home versus the situation that you found him in. He was crawling to a bus stop and, you know, he's gonna take a long ride home. He's gonna get home late. And he'd already had a series of unfortunate events that happened to him up to that point. And then I'm like, yeah, sure, you know. So I finally get him to his apartment, and like, all right, you know, have a good night and everything. And it's like at this point, you know, we've been waiting. It's like another 30, 45 minutes throughout all this process. And so I'm like, man, I'm starving. Like I got to go get dinner. And so by the time I go to a couple places, I'm like, places are closing. And I'm like, man, so I had to eat dinner at like a gas and I had like gas station
Yeah, like
Doritos and like a hot dog or something that was like a week old. And I'm thinking like, Peter Kuster, like there's no way. I am like the next morning, right? The next morning.
You missed weights.
No,
You
I didn't miss
slept
it. I
through.
was late. I showed up really late.
You've never been late. So I was
Yeah.
scared. I'm like,
Oh,
I was there. And I'm like,
yeah.
I just got my coach killed. He is
Yeah.
dead right now in a ditch. Like, this guy's not alive.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah. And so I showed up late the next morning and I was like, Peter, first of all, like I had to eat like chips from a gas station. And I was like taking this guy home and I don't regret any of it, but I was like, why, you know, what are you
Just threw
doing?
$40 of yours down the drain there. Not really down the drain, but
Yeah. I just like bought like $40 worth of food for this guy and then I ate like gas station chips and stuff and a hot dog, you know. But I remember this. I was like, I can't, you know, two things. I can't let Peter give this guy a ride home. But secondly, I was like, oh, this is an opportunity for you to do something good for somebody else other than yourself. And so took it and ran with it, you know. But it ended up being a funny story that, especially because the next morning I was late to, I don't know if I didn't set my alarm or if I finally got to bed a little bit late or something. But I was like, oh my goodness, and it ended up working out just fine. But I showed up just a little bit late to that next morning, and Peter was like, "Oh man, I thought you were dead." Like I thought
nah, he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. He's dead. Oh no.
He was gonna abduct me, but luckily I passed him on to you, and he abducted
I was like,
you.
he's gonna kidnap Peter. Yeah, but ended up being nothing ended up happening. But yeah, I remember talking about the next morning. So, but ended up, yeah, that's what kind of when you were starting to talk about being the best that you possibly can be, whether it be helping other people or anything, that kind of made me laugh a little bit because that's exactly what happened. I was like, Peter pulled over to help a homeless man, and he called me, and I was like, well,
But you finished the job.
Yeah, and then I was like, is Peter gonna tack this on to his good deeds? Does he?
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, I'm getting credit for that because if it wasn't for me, Coach wouldn't have given him a ride home. But
I just helped you be a better person.
That's right. You did. You helped me to be a better person. I was like, oh man. Anyway, that kind of made me laugh. I was thinking about that as you said that. So, well, thanks for all the interview and everything. And I know this is a little long, but people can watch as much of it as they like. And I think, you know, we've been kind of off of social media for a little bit, and we've been out of things for a little while because of COVID and because of everything, all the circumstances surrounding that. And I think it's a good to have perspective on leading up to, you know, from the time Nationals was canceled and school was canceled and the endless spring break, and then coming back in the fall. I think that's been it's really good to cue people in on what we've been doing as a team. We haven't just been off the mat, just gone, just, you know, not doing anything. You know, we're trying to make sure we're doing as much as we possibly can, and that our minds are focused on what we need to be doing, and then moving forward, that our minds are focused on what we need to be doing. So anyway, thanks, Peter. Anybody you want to give a shout out to?
No,
not your mom and dad.
Well, I'll shout out my mom because I don't want her to hurt me.
Yeah, that's right. You'd better.
Hey, Mom, I love you.
All right. Thanks, Peter.
All right. Thanks.